Ladies and gentlemen, it's your friend Mike Brady from Oceanliner Designs. How are we? I can't see myself. There we go. Now I can know that you can see me, and I hope you can hear me as well. Already people are commenting about last time I did a live stream where I made the wrong link or something, and it was a whole disaster. I had like 100 people waiting for the stream to start, and for them, the stream never truly started because I was somewhere else. Hello, hey, how are we going, guys? Good to see you all. Last time I did a stream, I counted down my top 10 trios or groups of Oceanliners, and I didn't get to talk with you guys much because I was sitting there looking at the screen the whole time, looking at the drawings, photographs of the ships. So I didn't get to talk with you all. So I thought today could be a fun little Q&A, a little bit of a chat. I've got my fuel oil good to go, so that'll keep me running. Oh, that's a shame. Naval guy sprained his finger yesterday. Can we get an F in the chat for Naval guy's finger, please? That'd be great. Hello, everybody. Hey. Alejandro Flores Ibarra says Mike Brady way better than Tom Brady. I don't know about that. He is the GOAT. So I got a little funny flack last time. I did my top 10 Oceanliners countdown because not many people were impressed that Normandy was there. But I think it deserved to be there. I don't know why I got in so much trouble for that. What do you guys think? Give me some questions there. Oh, we got a couple of Fs in the chat for the finger. That's good. Folding Eagle says, Oceanliner Designs, could you please do a Laker? I assume you mean one of the Great Lakes ships? I think so. Some of those beautiful old cargo ships, you know, like welded and riveted and various types from the 30s and 40s. One of them's still in service, right? That's been in service for like 70 or 80 years or something like that. But they're beautiful looking ships. I'd do a video on that. Enough people ask about it. Gee, you know, the Edmund Fitzgerald is pretty famous. We've got Manners Maketh here. Hello, Manners Maketh. Good to see you. We've got a lot of friends of the channel, which is really lovely. Hey guys, how you doing? Watching this while making fried chicken is the best way to pass time, says Syntech. Gee, you know, I only just woke up. It's 9 o'clock in the morning here, but that sounds really, really good right about now. Chelsea is here. Hello, Chelsea. She's a good friend of the channel. We did a video together a little while ago. Good to see you. Good to see you. People who hate Normandy are the nautical equivalent. That's a sign for me to take a sip of my coffee and start that again. People who hate Normandy are the nautical equivalent of I'm not like other girls people. You know, it's cool to hate things sometimes, like the movie Titanic. You know, I mean, how often do you see people hating on that? Really regularly, and I think it's because people like to hate it. There's a few reasons I guess it would tick off Oceanliner nerds, I guess, but at the same time, I love the film. You know, I'm gonna go out and just say I think it's a great film. And just like the Normandy is a great Oceanliner, it's pretty hard to ignore. There's something about having like a 20 or 30 foot ceiling on your smoking room. I forget how exactly big it was, but it was like 3 stories tall. It's pretty crazy. A Night to Remember is better, says Alejandro. Yeah, you know, I like them both differently. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I love A Night to Remember, but it really has that classic old film look, and it's actually probably a little more authentic as far as the way people talk and behave to the era. I'm really interested in the etiquette of that era, you know, like the Edwardian era, because people, Bill Sauter, the historian, had a few interesting points about this, but they existed in a totally different space and time to where we do now, and so a lot of the cultural nuance would have been really interesting to see in action. There's a book that I've got that I've mentioned on the channel before, but it's called Manners for Men. It's from 1896, and it details how you are meant to behave in public when you are at the theater or when you are on a ship or in a carriage, and all these little things. And like, say for example, you were walking down the street with a woman that you were courting as a man. You're courting a lady, and you were to see a female relative, like your mother or your sister or something. You couldn't actually introduce each other without prior consent. So I think in theory, and I'm going off the top of my head, you would have to ignore each other and walk straight past because you hadn't asked beforehand, hey, do you mind if I formally introduce you both, which I thought was interesting. What else? What else is going on in here? Hello. How about the Nazi Titanic movie? Actually, I've seen bits of it. Yeah, so it was made in 42, I think, because Joseph Goebbels was a huge Titanic nut, of all people, you know. I know the Titanic community has some pretty odd characters in it sometimes, but Joseph Goebbels has got to be up there. He was really interested in the film. He was really interested in the ship, and so made the film. I think they used the Cap Arcona for a lot of the external scenes showing lifeboats and things, but the movie is absolute trash. I mean, it's a propaganda piece. It's absolutely awful. They have, at one point, I'm remembering a flamenco dance scene where you've got someone Spanish dancing. It's just mad, you know, and it's really ridiculous. But although a few of the external shots of the model that they used were reused in either A Night to Remember or the other Titanic film from 1953, the one which has the siren going off the entire time that the ship is sinking, which definitely didn't get annoying. Skittery Fiber says, when are you going to make more Minecraft videos, Mike? For context, guys, so Skittery Fiber works with Back Out and Join, who's a pretty, well-known Minecraft ship creator, and he made the Queen Mary that I made a video about last year sometime, which is really cool. And it's literally got millions and millions of bricks. And I know for a fact that at the moment they're working on Titanic and the Thompson graving dock. So they've got the whole graving dock of the ship just sitting in it with the pump houses next to it, which is really cool. So I'd love to see that, because in 2018, I went to Belfast and I got to walk around and have a look through. And for you guys who've been, you know what it's like looking down into that chasm of a dry dock, knowing how many ships have been there from history. Like so many famous liners that I love, go there for fitting out or go there for refit or whatever, let alone Olympic and Titanic. So it'll be really cool to see those in service. Folding Eagle says, what are you talking about? The SS Alpina, which, began service in 1943 to supply the war with ore and is currently the oldest ship sailing under her own power on the lakes. She is now a cement carrier. I think that's what I'm talking about. She's got very classic lines that, like really classic lake freighter with the tower at the stern and a long, pretty sleek hull. But yeah, beautiful, beautiful ships, those. They're really special, The only other that I can think of that's still in service and was sold last year, that is probably like the oldest running passenger ship that isn't like a ferry or a day tripper or something like the I'm gonna have a mental blank all the time now because I've had one sip of my coffee. There's a we always talk about it in my Discord server and I forgot the name of it. There's a little steamer down in New Zealand that operates on a lake. It's from 1912. So that, excluding those, I think the oldest operating passenger ship is still the former Stockholm, which I don't know. Maybe you guys can fill me in. Is it being scrapped? I forget what happened to it, but yeah, it's been in service since what, like 48 or something like that, which is pretty impressive. Especially considering it lost its bow when it collided with Andrea Doria. I mean, it was all the way back to like the well deck, which is pretty crazy. That's a pretty serious damage. This is really cool. Someone just said, Sir Gruff says that Stephen Payne, naval architect of Queen Mary 2, lectured at our uni this week, which was very cool. Stephen Payne is such a really lovely, interesting person. He's fascinated by Oceanliners at his core. He's just a big Oceanliner fanatic like the rest of us. And he's really, he gets behind, engineers who are just starting out. He does a lot of work with people looking to get into engineering. And I just think he's an absolutely stellar person. Really interesting as well. And there's not too many videos, I guess, out there of him on YouTube talking about, naval architecture. But I just love that he just says outright that, in designing Queen Mary 2, obviously there are a lot of challenges, but he was taking little elements of some classic liners and referencing them. The most obvious one is the massive wave break on the bow of Queen Mary 2, which practically makes total sense, but also, is maybe a little inspired by Normandy's, which, she had that huge break on her turtleback forecastle deck, which is pretty cool. James Crabb, heard of Hikawa Maru and Brazil Maru, Japanese passenger ships of the 40s and 50s? Yeah, we haven't done anything on, I don't think I've covered any Southeast Asian ocean liners yet. That'd be really cool. Japan has had a very long seagoing tradition. Some of those liners are stunning. And honestly, I don't really, I have to do the research and do the videos on them. My area of, interests and specialities probably sits in British liners, maybe because of my own inherent biases, because we, being from there originally, Dad coming out from London in 1959. I'm going to do a video with him one time. What do you guys think? Like, we'll get him in and ask what it was like to sail on a liner in the 50s, because I think he was about 10 or something, but he remembers a heap. So that would be cool to talk about. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, something on another country that I think I've totally missed, aside from, Japan, is the Netherlands, like Holland. Crazy shipbuilding history. Some of them are stunning, especially the motor vessel Johan van Oldenbarnevelt. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that ship before, but that's a favorite of mine. The Naval Guy, do you have any thoughts on the Doña Paz? Yeah, tragic disaster. So that is the ferry that caught fire, right? Just off the top of my head. Tragic. Yeah, really, really sad story, because the sheer volume of people who were lost in that is horrific. It's well worth a read. It's really interesting. It'd be hard to do a kind of in-depth video. I've been doing a lot of animation work recently, right? So I can and I'll show you a behind the scenes, maybe in a minute, if I can load it up and if you guys are interested to see how I animate. I can't show anything from the front because I'm just drawing these ships and animating them from the side. So I can't do anything too complex with like ships rolling over, because it's only, a flat side image. So I could do Titanic breaking up because that was from the side, but I can't do anything like a ship rolling. So unfortunately, until I learn to 3D model as well and triple my workload, you won't be seeing any really in-depth videos on things like that. Although the Empress of Ireland, I guess I can, fake it a little. Mike Brady. So this is from Bonnie Trujillo. Says, Mike Brady, are you doing a drawing of Olympic with a hole in the hull from the Hawk? Yeah, that's a really cool idea for a video that I want to do. Examining the damage that Hawk did to Olympic, because one of the cornerstones of the ridiculous Titanic and Olympic was switched theory is that the damage to Olympic was so severe that it bent her keel, and the ship had to be sunk. Because the logical solution to having a damaged ship is to intentionally swap it with its near identical, but not identical sister, and then sink it on purpose. Rather than, say, emergency dry docking it and then accidentally spreading a fire that doesn't get contained and then collecting on the insurance that way. The easiest way to do giant ocean liner insurance fraud is a complex scheme where you sail on the maiden voyage a ship directly into an ice field and sink it. Not fire or fraud, no. That's the easiest way. The damage done to Olympic was pretty easily fixed, some ships have been way more horrifically damaged without suffering bent keels. If an impact was ever going to bend a keel, it would have been Stockholm bashing into the Andrea Doria. I don't know. The idea of this bent keel thing just blows my mind, because Hawk very clearly did some superficial shell plating damage and got wedged out, obviously damaged the Olympics prop shaft, and that had to be replaced. But, the Harlan and Wolff are master shipbuilders, right? They got Olympic in there, they cut those plates out, they put new ones in, and the ship was good as new. So it's pretty funny. Here's something you probably haven't drawn that would be interesting to do. The Electromotive Division E8 units. It's a locomotive, not a ship. Can you do the Amtrak paint scheme specifically, please? This is from the Rail Fan Man, who I'm going to go out on a limb and says likes trains. There's a strong crossover between, I think, ocean liner nerds like me and steam train and diesel and electric locomotive people, train people. Unfortunately, I know nothing about trains. I've got an old clock down there, which was a master clock from a signals shop at the railway works here in Melbourne. That's about as far as my connection with trains go. I just don't know what I'm talking about. I could probably draw a train, but I probably couldn't really sit here and talk about it in detail, unfortunately. Maybe one day. Glamorous Titanic 21 says, have you ever heard of the streamlined Oceanliner concept by Norman Bell Geddes? It was a revolutionary concept from the 1930s and looked like something from 50 years in the future. Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's just crazy looking. And, you know, you're right. It did look like something really futuristic. And it wasn't too far off a contemporary cruise ship in that when you think in the 30s that you had a hull, very clearly defined hull, and then sitting on top of it, a superstructure that had no real structural, load bearing. This isn't the right terminology, but the superstructure had no real, it was just like a layer cake sitting on top of the hull. The hull provided the rigidity and the strength for the ship. It was essentially like a box beam, but the superstructure just kind of sits on top and is along for the ride. Whereas modern day ships, you've got one flowing hull going up into the superstructure. Like Norman Bell Geddes' streamlined Oceanliner was just very curvy with this crazy tumble home. Tumble home being, a ship, you think of a ship as having like a flat side, like a flat hull. A tumble home is actually where it splays out a little bit at the waterline. So instead of being dead straight, it curves in a little bit. So you think of famous sailing ships like the Victory. If you ever look at HMS Victory, you'll see that the hull, very clearly, it's not flat. It kind of bends outwards as it gets towards the waterline, and that provides stability, lateral stability from rolling. And virtually all Oceanliners have tumble homes, including Titanic. Titanic Olympic had a slight tumble home out. The Queen Mary 2 has a tumble home hull, very slight tumble home to add stability. Lusitania had a very obvious tumble home. The one off the top of my head, there were some Dutch Oceanliners that had very, very obvious tumble home hulls where they just kind of go bloop, like that. So yeah, the streamlined Oceanliner, very cool. I wish they'd built it. Oh, so many comments coming through. I can't attack them all. Flashback of French pre-dreadnoughts. Yeah, Federico Del Sardo gets it for sure. They're like, where would that have been? Like 1900, some of the like 1890s French battleships had these crazy hull designs. They're kind of like, they're almost like horizontal by the time they get to the waterline. Go and check them out. Can you give us a name of one of those French pre-dreadnoughts in the chat real quick for people to look up? Because those things are absolutely hilarious. Nonsensical nautical ramblings is a good question. What is the most prized item in your collection? So the Empress of Ireland stuff, you just see there the fruit bowl over my shoulder that I covered in the video last week, whenever I did it. I love that, and it's really special. All of that Empress of Ireland stuff is really special. But there's something that I've got. It's in another room, so I won't go and get it for you guys, but it's the nameplate from one of Chusan's lifeboats, which was a beautiful old P&O Oceanliner from the 50s, which, it maybe doesn't have at the moment, it will one day, it will be an antique, so will I. It doesn't have the strong historical significance of something, say, from the Empress of Ireland, but it has real personal significance, because when I started my business in 2018, I was just a kid out of university. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. All I knew is I love drawing, I love ships, so I kind of like put those two things together and thought, I'll, draw some ships. And I started with the immigrant ships that used to carry people to Australia, because people are interested in them. My family came out as well on a ship, and so I just wanted to kind of start with what I knew. And there are hundreds of really interesting ships, and I want to do videos on some of them that carried people to Australia, because after World War II, people were fleeing Europe essentially and coming over here, including my family. That's a story for another time. That's a really interesting story about how we even ended up here. So, I've had a total mental blank. Where was I going with that? So yeah, when I started out my business, I've genuinely just talked myself into a. Wait, what was that question? I've completely forgotten where I was going with that. Oh, I'm sorry. Someone I'm sure will remind me of where I was going. That's embarrassing. Gee. Oh man, I gotta drink more coffee. Where was I taking that? When I started my business? Well, most prized item in my Oceanliner collection. All right, got it. Sorry, we're back. So I started off with what I knew, and then I thought, as someone who's just starting out, I didn't really know how to really bring these ships to life. Wanted to learn the most I could about these liners. So what better way than to talk to people who actually served in different capacities and roles on ships of the era. And it just so happened that on a bunch of like ship message boards, like old school, you know, leave a comment on, like, not ship spotting, but that equivalent, they had people who'd been on the P&O liners leaving comments and saying, hi there, I was a purser on board P&O, P&O's Chusan, 1955 through 1962, best years at sea of my life. And they'd leave these incredible comments, and they always had left their email addresses, because, you know, back in the day, when you left a comment on a message room or whatever, it would have your email address. So I bulk emailed a ton of people and said, hey, you know, I'm a maritime history nerd, and I'm really interested, and I'm drawing these ships. What can you tell me about what life was like? And a lot of them wrote back to me. And one of them, who I actually have his book here, his name was Paul de la Motte Harrison, and he was a World War II vet. Originally, he had served in the Royal Navy as a landing ship operator, a tank landing ship captain, commander. And they were sunk by the storm that blew in directly after D-Day. And his entire crew got fished out of the water after a while of swimming around. And he just had these incredible stories. And when we started speaking, he was in his 90s, late 90s. And anyway, you know, he had served on Multan, Canton, and Chusan in the purser's department. So that basically covered P&O's Far East service. So Multan would go to Australia, but Canton and Chusan would go out to Japan, Singapore, and what have you. He just so happened to have a bunch of stuff sitting in his house from his days at Chusan. And as we talked more, he'd send it through to me. Because he, you know, as a very old gentleman of whatever, 94, he kind of figured that his time was coming eventually. So he was sending me things, and he sent me the nameplate from one of Chusan's lifeboats with a note that said, I just want to give this to you, Mike, because I don't want it to end up in the burner when I'm gone. And actually, you can just see there, right, on my thumb, a little life ring from the Chusan, one of the little souvenir life rings that they... I'll get it for you, hang on. So one of these, they used to sell these in the barbershop on board liners, and they were painted by the crew, I believe, back in the day. This is one of the early wooden ones that was hand-painted. He sent this to me as well. And he became a good friend of mine. And he was like 95, and he used to email me. If I hadn't spoken to him for a month or two, he'd email and say, oh, hello, Michael, just wanted to make sure that you're doing okay. And I say, yes, Paul, I'm 25, I'm doing fine. How are you? You're 95. So he was a good friend. And unfortunately, Paul passed away last year. But before he passed away, he got his memoirs out from the Second World War, and they published it in a little book, which is really cool. So I'm glad that I've got a lovely memory of my friend, and he signed it for me. So yeah, those little things that Paul sent are definitely the highlight of my maritime collection, because that Chusan lifeboat plaque nameplate, you can see it in photographs in pictures of Chusan. It's green, it's got golden text that says Chusan. So it's a very cool little thing. Sorry, that was a long story, but I love talking about him. Everybody is dabbing in the chat. Everybody is dabbing in the chat. That is what is going on right now. What did I just miss? Why is everyone dabbing in the chat? I'm not going to be able to pronounce this person's name. It's H3... Oh, hey, I'm Gabri, I think it said. Okay. I was able to decode that. What is your favorite ocean liner from all of history? That is the Dutch motor vessel, the Johan van Oldenbarnevelt. That is my favorite ocean liner from all of history. It served in the Second World War. It survived. Its sister ship did not, the Marnix van Sint Aldegonda. Really interesting ship, crazy design, served as an immigrant liner out to Australia, then a cruise ship. Then it caught on fire and sank in 1963. So it's a favorite of mine. Gabe Hammond, do you have any opinions on the SS Great Eastern, like its misuse or its design? Yeah, you know, I'm really devastated, or Devo, as we say here in Australia. I'm Devo that the Great Eastern never got to fulfill its original purpose, which was to serve as an immigrant ship to Australia. It would have been amazing seeing photographs of it here, where it was intended to come. You know, I don't know if the world was ready for a ship of that scale. It just sounds like... I've got a book or two on Isambard Brunel, her designer. Really interesting character, you know, to take engineering principles from railway bridges, and he designed, I I'm pretty sure. Again, you guys are going to have to correct me on this. Was it the Great Eastern Railway or the Great Western Railway? I forget. But one, he had a lot to do with Bristol, and he designed the railway works, and bridges, and all kinds of stuff. And he took a lot of those principles from bridge design and just applied it to ships. And you've got the Great Western, the Great Britain, the Great Eastern. I think it was just announced that they're building a 1-to-1 replica of the Great Western for Bristol. But not a 1-to-1 replica of the Great Eastern, which is a shame, because that thing is a monster of a ship, and I would love to see it in real life. If you look up the world's largest ship by year, the jump from when the Great Eastern was introduced, like it went from, I don't know off the top of my head, like 5,000 gross registered tons or less to like 14,000 gross registered tons in a year. It's just so funny. It was the Great Western Railway. Thank you, guys. Cool. The Great Western Railway. I love that we've got train people in the chat. Thank you for being here. You're a very proud people. I'm glad that we have the ambassadors for train people here with us, because the relationship is so tight between ocean liners and trains, especially with Canadian Pacific. You know, that whole concept of you can literally cover the entire world without ever once leaving the boundaries or the bounds of a Canadian Pacific ship or train. I just find that fascinating. James Crabb, where do you get your 3-piece suits in Melbourne? Oh, well, as a fellow Melbourneian, nice to see you. A friend of mine, his name's Samuel Diamond, he's a tailor. Go check him out. He's really good. Craig Peter, random question. Best designed ship that never actually got built? Oh, man, that's a good question. I think it would have to be the motor vessel Oceanic. So White Star's entry in that late 20s, early 30s Oceanliner rush. So France gets out the Normandy. Germany has got Europa and Bremen. Italy, Rex, Conte di Savoia. Britain, thus far, Queen Mary. There would have been a monstrous ship they were designing, a motor vessel, 1,000 feet long, thereabouts, called the Oceanic, which was White Star had a very close relationship with the name Oceanic, because one of their earliest ships was named Oceanic. Then they had the second one in the late 19th century. Real shame she never got built. I would have really been interested to see how White Star took their approach to ship design and building with Harland and Wolff and pushed it into the 20s and 30s on that grander scale, because when that project was cancelled because of the Great Depression, the White Star instead opted to build 2 smaller motor vessels, Georgic and Britannic, which were beautiful and lovely, but it would have been fascinating seeing it on that scale, what the interiors would have been like in Oceanic, the lounge and so on. Because as far as I understand, and I might be incorrect here, but originally the concept called for an enlargement of the Olympic class. So they were going to take Olympic or Britannic or whatever, and then blow it out to 1,000 feet, and a much wider beam, larger gross registered tonnage. I think there's a concept illustration of it with a cruiser stern. So they delete the clipper stern, that classic shape. We're all familiar with it from Titanic. Give it a Queen Mary style cruiser stern, and introduce that as a liner. That would have been really interesting. But I think the project they scrapped that idea and then evolved it into the Oceanic. Never finished. 3-funneled motor vessel with these little short, squat funnels. I think the Queen Mary and the Normandy were much more beautiful looking ships. If you look at the concept designs for the Oceanic, she would have been probably the ugly duckling of the bunch, but it would have been really interesting. Dinah says, Mr. Liner, what are you drinking? Mr. Liner. I like it. Mr. Liner, I'll take it. This is just coffee. This is a flat white, which I've just made for myself. The first thing I did when I moved house was buy a coffee machine. That's literally the first thing I bought, because I am fueled by coffee. I call it my fuel oil for good reason. Mauritania drawing when? It's coming soon. Javier Bonilla says, I'm watching a young 1940s Clark Kent and he's talking about ocean liners. That's rad. Oh, thank you. What I loved about the whole Superman thing. I know this is going way off topic. I've got to see the view count drop. But when Christopher Reeve, who was playing him, did it so well, he'd be so like meek and mild with his glasses on, but he'd take them off and you know, he was in Superman mode. You know, it really sold the idea because you can tell this is me when I'm wearing my glasses versus not wearing my glasses. You know, I just look slightly more intelligent when I have them on. The Rail Fan Man says, I accidentally threw my phone, now I'm mad. Why? Why'd you do that? Did I say something wrong about phones? About trains? Did I say something wrong about trains and in anger you threw it? Pacific CY says, JVO shirt when? If I get enough comments in the chat, I will go and design a Johan van Oldenbarnevelt Hawaiian shirt and sell it on my store for you guys. All right, how does that sound? Let me know if you would like a Johan van Oldenbarnevelt Oceanliner Designs branded Hawaiian shirt. Let me know in the chat. Andrew Brendan says, I second the motion. A detailed Lapland drawing would be great. Yeah, there are so many Oceanliners that I want to cover. And so recently I struck up an agreement with a production studio who helped me out with the channel. And they said, you know, Oceanliners are a niche topic. Are you sure you've got enough material to get you through a video a week? And I said, I'm limited only by how much work I can do. You guys know how many liners there are, how many topics you can cover, how many things. Historic Travels, Sam Pence, has got his YouTube channel where he covers the Titanic. He's done other ships, but he could look at the Titanic from 100 different angles. You know what I mean? That's one ship. So I think, yeah. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by... I'm just seeing JVO shirt when. While we've been talking just now, a person has just joined the Oceanliner Designs Patreon as a navigation officer. So welcome aboard. I won't say your name out loud, but it just came out on my phone. I won't say your name because it looks like your actual real life name, but lovely to have you on board and thank you so much. And can't wait to talk with you on the Discord server. Mike Brady, what happened? What would have happened if White Star Line ordered a 4th Olympic class vessel? Yeah, that was kind of where they were going with the with that concept of the Super Olympic, we'll call it, that 4th Olympic class ship would have had the same propulsion system as you know, Olympic, Titanic, and Britannic, but would have been bigger, a little bigger. I don't know how much gross registered tonnage 1,000 feet would have over, say, Olympic, which was 882 feet. So I don't know if a lot of these terms that I throw around, you know, like gross registered tonnage, for ages I thought was a measure of weight, you know, like how much a ship weighs. Tons, you'd think it's weight. But gross registered tonnage is actually just the internal volume of a ship. So how much registered space there is that is usable, that is not external. So that's a really interesting point because a lot of people ask, after Olympics refit in 1913, it came out with a higher gross registered tonnage than Titanic had. And people say, how is that possible when everybody knows Titanic was bigger than Olympic, right? But the reason for that is that on Olympic, they enclosed a couple of small areas. They added a Cafe Parisien. That part of Olympic's deck and promenade was originally just promenade and open. By adding the Cafe Parisien, it's now got 4 walls and a roof, right? That is now included in the total gross registered tonnage count. And they also did the same up on A deck. They added some cabins just abaft first class grand staircase forward entrance. So the ship now has more enclosed space that can be used for things, and therefore it's got a high gross registered tonnage. So I don't know what the Super Olympic might have had over Olympic in terms of gross registered tonnage, because being 1,000 feet, they must have had to have put that beam, the ship's beam from Olympic's 93 feet, probably about 100 feet, surely, if not more. I'm trying to talk really seriously and authoritatively on this topic, and I keep seeing comments that are cracking me up. Wicker, Johan van Oldenbarnevelt 3-piece suit when? So Chicken Pancake says that the Oceanic design was meant to be 70,000 to 80,000 gross registered tons, which sounds about right, because, you know, Queen Mary is up around that scale, and she was 1,000 feet plus, so that makes sense. Diego says, never heard of the Super Olympic. Didn't the White Star Line building a Titanic replacement, which would have improved on the Olympic design? Yeah, I think that's the Super Olympic. I think that's the one I'm talking about, because there's a really early design where you've got a 1,000-foot-long ship with a cruiser stern, 4 funnels. You know, it would have looked visually similar, but just a bit bigger. I'd love to draw it out of curiosity. Erica says, greetings, trains and ships people. I am both as well as a plane person. That's the trifecta. How cool is that? There was a cruise ship involved indirectly to the 1977 aviation disaster between KLM 4805 and Pan Am 1736. Was that the collision in fog? There was like the two 747s at what's the name of that place? It's going to drive me nuts. On the island, and it's the worst aviation disaster in history, where you had the KLM and the Pan Am taking off in fog, and one took off and couldn't stop and essentially collided into the other one, which was horrific. What was the connection with Golden Odyssey, the cruise ship? I'd be interested to know. What else have we got here? Mr. Liner, when SS Normandy video, says Meshception. Yeah, I drew it. I've drawn Normandy. I just haven't done anything with it. I gotta stop being lazy and make something. What do you think? Tenerife, thank you. Yes, the Tenerife aviation disaster. Yeah, I'd be interested to know what Golden Odyssey had to do with Tenerife. Alexius, if you don't stop asking about when the body pillows are coming, I will mute you. I will mute you. Permanently. Are you going to get the Lego RMS Titanic? If I had, I would that I had the time to sit down and make a Lego set. Gee, I'd be a happy boy if I could do that. No, unfortunately not. Maybe one day. Do you think they should have kept the Olympic for World War II? Yeah, she was actually in good nick, and I recall reading that her chief engineer was really sad when she was being scrapped in 30. I think she was laid up in 33 or 34, and he was quoted in the newspaper as saying her engines are running the best they ever had. And she was pushing crazy speed. Olympic was even doing speeds up to 24 knots, 24, 25 knots, which is pretty impressive given, she's not totally turbine driven. She's not like one of the Greyhounds like Lusitania or Mauritania. So, I've mentioned it a couple times before, my alternate history Olympic that I want to do a video about. What if Olympic wasn't scrapped? Where she, by weird coincidence and strange things, ends up as a floating flak battery in service of the German Navy, protecting the battleship Tirpitz in a fjord. With their funnels cut off. Imagine all the funnels cut off and replaced with like a hastily welded platform with big 88mm anti-aircraft guns and flak guns on top. And then partially sunk into the bottom of the fjord so that she doesn't, to help with the stability. I've been thinking about this a lot, in case you couldn't tell. Zitrex says, are you a fan of aircraft carriers? Yeah, they're fascinating. There's a great book, actually, that I've got called Return to Midway, which is the sister book to this absolute classic by Robert Ballard, featuring artworks by Ken Marshall, who's my favorite artist of all time. Really interesting book. Return to Midway covers their investigation of the Lexington. They go down and they show photographs and paintings of the wreck of the Lexington, and all their anti-aircraft guns are still pointing up into the sky, and it's really, really haunting. And it's also fascinating that the Lexington ended up pointing upright, so she rolled over and sank, but fortunately sits on an even keel now, so she actually looks, relatively intact. It's interesting how that happens, eh? Not too many shipwrecks end up upside down on the ocean floor. Bismarck rolled over and sank, and yet she sits upright. And in fact, there's another book by the same team, Robert Ballard, talking about his discovery of, or his explorations of Bismarck. And I've got that over there, and that's a really interesting book. But again, with paintings by Ken Marshall, which is interesting. If they hadn't scrapped Olympic, when they did, do you think she'd be here today? I don't think so. She would have been scrapped long ago. The problem is really the hull plating, because the way those ships were built, it's pretty hard to maintain riveted hull ships, I believe, on that scale, because the fatigue over time, because the ships really, as they go over waves, they're doing this. That's exaggerated, but that's the motion of the hull. They're bending it takes a huge toll on certain points of the ship's hull, and you actually get plate tearing and things like that, and it's a complete mess. Now, in all fairness, the what's the name of that ship? The Doulos Foss, I believe it's called, but she was built in like 1911 or something like that. Served all the way through until the last 10 years. Now it's a hotel. The Russian submarine salvage vessel, whose name I've forgotten, but if you look it up, it was launched in 1912. It's a twin-hulled catamaran design ship with plated hull, just like any liner built in 1912. It's got a clipper stern, right? Still in service as Russia's submarine salvage vessel, and I believe they sent it out to recently check out the cruiser Moskva that was sunk in the conflict with Ukraine. Still in service, but not a ship on the same scale as Olympic. So no, I don't think she'd still be around. Apparently Olympic was a nightmare to dismantle. I want to do a video on scrapping one of these liners, because Berengaria, there's really interesting footage of when she was being scrapped, and they're bringing the funnels down, and you realize how flimsy they are. Like, it's just such thin sheet metal, and the funnel, as soon as it doesn't have the supports, it doesn't like in the movie Titanic, the funnel goes like, the funnel kind of just goes like, SS America video when? Soon. Trademark soon. Yeah, I want to do something on the America. She's beautiful. Mike, have you watched Top Gun Maverick? No, I have not yet, Sean. Not yet. Will you consider playing Roblox games? You'd be surprised by how good they are. Yeah, again, I'd love to spend more time playing games, but my schedule does not permit. A large number of people on the Pan Am flight at Tenerife were connecting with the Golden Odyssey after arriving at Tenerife. Right. That makes sense. Yes, because they were arriving for a cruise, and a lot of them, yeah. Ah, man, that's sad. Mike Brady, what's the maximum degree angle of Titanic's rudder when doing tiller commands? That's a good question. You've caught me out on that. I don't know it off the top of my head. Sorry, I'll have to go and check. So many good questions coming through. Gee, I wish I could attack them all. I mean, I still want to do that little behind the scenes segment, but you guys are hitting me with good questions. New Amsterdam video by Gabriel. Yeah, New Amsterdam, another beautiful Dutch Oceanliner, which I've been meaning to cover for a long time. Have you ever thought... okay, here's a good one. Kit10K says, have you ever thought about doing a video on the Wilhelm Gustloff? Such a massive tragedy. Yeah, so that period of history where late World War II, you've got thousands of people fleeing the advance of the Red Army, perfectly parallels the start of Germany's campaign into Russia, where with I believe, what was some of the places, Sevastopol and a few like these sea coastal fortresses, you had Russian people fleeing the advance of the German army in whatever could float, and the Luftwaffe was deliberately targeting a lot of these ships. And I always forget the name of. Let me look this up real quick. Was the Estonia? There was one which was sunk. Not the Estonia. That was the ferry that sank. You idiot. What are you doing? I forgot the name of it, but it was 1941. It was a tiny motor ship. I mean, it had like 400... It was 400 feet long or something. But it was packed with thousands of refugees, and it was sunk by 2 Heinkel 111 bombers. And, sank in like 4 minutes or something outrageous like that. It's really horrific. If you look at the largest loss of life at sea by ship, the top of the list is dominated by Japanese transport ships in World War II. They were just being hunted by this American submarine packs. So these beautiful old Japanese ocean liners from the 30s and 40s, loaded up with Japanese troops, sent to the islands where they were fighting, be it Guam or whatever. And they were just being torpedoed by, Baleo and Gato class submarines. And they lost thousands of guys at a time, 4,000 or 5,000 guys. Fascinating. I love the majority of this chat is people throwing ship names at me and saying, "Have you done this one yet?" No, not yet. I haven't done the Wilhelm Gustloff. Here's an interesting question. Titanic Gaming says, "What is your Titanic breakup theory?" I've got an interesting thought around this, because there's been a lot of conjecture around towers, so Titanic breaking up and whole towers dropping off and all this kind of thing. I think I kind of take inspiration, a little bit of interest in historic ships that have broken in half, and there've been a few for different reasons. But the most compelling for me, has got to be the American Star, because she's a riveted hull Oceanliner, right? That's she was blown in on a gale, gets stuck on Fuerteventura Island, the beach there. Sorry, it's called Fuerteventura, right? The beach, and because she's broadside to the Atlantic, these huge rollers are coming in and breaking. The breakers are coming in and smashing the ship on the side. Within like the first day, her hull had cracked, and the stern had basically separated from the bow. And you see these photographs of it, and it's like kind of in an L shape. Very clean break. It's interesting. There's a single fracture line running from the top of the superstructure all the way down to the keel. And so the stern broke off and disintegrated. And the bow section sat there for like 10 years or 15 years. And it looks like it was cut with a knife. Like, it is surgical. So shell plating fractures in a very clean way. And there's like a single point of failure as the stresses on the hull increase. The decks, it seems to me that there's a single point of failure, whereas traditionally depictions of Titanic's breakup show it basically disintegrating in the middle. Like, suddenly there's no structural integrity in the middle of the ship, and that entire section between the third and fourth funnel just goes boom and turns into nothingness, and just there's things flying everywhere, which doesn't really sit totally right with me, because if you look at American Star, and it's just like this nice little, like, perfect separation. So I believe in actually like a very clean kind of break with Titanic, where the hull held on for so long, and maybe over the course of minutes, even as much as 10 minutes before the breakup, you've got things failing, deck plates separating, bulkheads being removed from where, they're all riveted onto the decks, and maybe they're just beginning to be wrenched off as the shell plating, the plating itself, is tearing, the bulkhead plating is tearing. So then you have that point of failure, and in my mind, I see it as like a beautiful, clean, failure. And then as the ship the stern is sinking again, you've got this exposed, jagged metal, this flat, broad surface just being ripped apart by the force of this water, the hydrodynamic forces of the ship sinking. So I get the feeling that's maybe what might have happened, and why you've got big chunks of the stern section that are missing, in my opinion. Yeah, the steam pipes twisted around each other. There's a lot of twisting going on in there. There's so many forces. I mean, you've got something the size of a city block just tearing itself apart. It's pretty crazy to think about. But again, I'm not a nautical engineer. I'm open to suggestion. I think the authors of On a Sea of Glass have a different theory where they think towers fell off, and I don't know. But in my mind, because of American Star and a couple other ships, I just see it as like a clean cut. And in fact, let me boot up my animation software here real quick. I use Unreal Engine to animate my ships, and I'll show you my animation of Titanic breaking up, because I did that for my big piece video, and I actually animated my drawing and had it break up. And in my mind, you can kind of see what I thought the breakup would look like. What was the first ship with gravity davits? That's a really good question. I'm sure someone in the chat here knows. I don't know off the top of my head. I have a question. Will you ever make more what ifs, like what if Lusitania never sank, or what if Oceanic 3 was built? Yes, I want to do a whole bunch of what ifs. I've got a lot of questions myself about, what would it have been like if this ship didn't sink? Or what would it have been like if this ship did sink? What if Queen Mary sank on its maiden voyage? Imagine that. North Sea Star says, Mike, what is your favorite American ship? That's a really good question. I've got a favorite warship, and I've got a favorite Oceanliner. My favorite Oceanliner, American Oceanliner, it's a tie between United States and America. But, special mention to the Matson liners. So Lurline, Malolo, those sister ships. I love those. Fortunately, you don't get to see them anymore because they've all been scrapped. But there's pretty dramatic photographs, actually, of Britannis sinking. Which let me just see if I can find this. So Britannis started life as one of the Lurline ships. I believe the Monterey in 1932, and she was being towed for scrapping and just started sinking as late as like the 2000s, I think. Like, this is relatively recently. Just go ahead and check out on Google, look up Britannis, Britanis sinking. And the footage, the photographs are crazy. Like, the ship rolled over and the bow was pointing up in the air, and it was pretty nuts. So yeah, I have a couple of favorite American ships. All right, so I've got my animation software loading up here real quick. So I'm just going to flick over to that in a second to show you guys a little behind the scenes of how I animate my videos, because I don't think I've ever shown this off before except to patrons on the Discord server. Speaking of patrons, while the software is loading up, another person just joined the Patreon. Welcome aboard. So lovely to have you. I won't use your name because I think it is your real life name, but lovely to have you here. So I'm going to show you guys the breakup sequence of Titanic real quick. So what I'm going to do is just add that source real quick. Just talk amongst yourselves while I do this real quick. All right, here we go. What am I doing? So we're going to add, in the meantime, I'm just going to answer a question. Drawing of RMS Aquitania, when? Soon. Spinostroyer1 says, Mike, what books would you recommend for researching ships? Yeah, so I would really highly recommend anything that gives you... Sorry, let me just drag this so you can see me still. Anything that gives you a broader understanding of liners. So, for example, the biggest help for me in learning about ocean liners and ships in general, how they were built, was actually the Titanic, the Ship Magnificent duo of books. Because if you can understand the way that Titanic was built, you can then actually apply that logic to literally any ocean liner from the 1880s through to the 1960s and 1970s when they started to weld them in segments. So I would highly recommend those books. And then anything that gives you an idea of how they were operated. So I talk about them a lot, but Hull Down, it was written by White Star Line's Commodore. Tramps and Ladies, which was written by Cunard Line's Commodore, will give you some insight on then once you've got the way that the ships were built and the technical side of things down pat, then you can get an idea of, okay, what was it like to actually be on these things and operate them? Because no matter how cool we think it would be to be the captain of an ocean liner, at the end of the day, it's a job, They talk about it really casually like it's just their job. So yeah, I'd get my head around what it was actually like, because we romanticize quite a lot. But I think to really be on these ships would have been, it was like living in a village and working. The purser's department. You might work as a purser in the Olympic and never speak with the crew who serve as third-class stewards forward, for example. Maybe a bad example because the pursers kind of spoke with everyone. But, there were different departments on the ship who would never speak with each other. You'd never see them because it was such a huge place to work. So there you go. So, all right, look, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you guys a behind the scenes, which means I have to close the chat because I'll be not using two screens. But I'm going to show you guys my animation of the Titanic sinking. So obviously this is quite bright, but you guys would recognize this from my big piece video of the Titanic sinking. And it looks pretty legitimate from the side. But when you get around the side, you realize it's actually just a flat plane with, what is this? I have no idea what that is. Anyway, so it's actually just a flat image except for the promenades, which are layered slightly. You can see that there's a little bit of space in between them so that I can get the lights shining like that. So I layer the lights over the top. And then what it means is you can get some pretty cool angles. So you can sit here and look up, and that looks pretty good, but you can't get this kind of angle and then look up that way because you can tell it's flat. So I'm kind of constricted to show things from the side. I'm just gonna pause that for a second and go back over to the streaming software and see you guys laughing at the fact that you've got this like really legitimate looking Titanic animation that's perfectly flat. While we've been talking as well, we had another person join the Discord as a the Discord, to the Patreon as a navigation officer. So Matt, thank you so much. Welcome aboard. Salute to you. Salute to everyone who's joined the Patreon so far. It really helps. You know, I work pretty long hours on this stuff, and I do it because I know you guys love seeing this, and I love getting the content out. But to see people, you know, put into the channel, it really, for me, just, yeah, it's like getting a big thumbs up. So I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. So let's have a look at this animation. So here's how this works. With this software that I use, so this is a video games engine software. So people use this to make video games. All I've done is basically told the software where to put this different parts of this Titanic hull. Now you probably can't tell, but the hull is actually split into two sections around about here. And so as the ship breaks up, those two sections are going to go in different directions. So there we go. All right, so let's roll the animation from here. Now, obviously, it's really bright at the moment, but I'm going to talk about that in a second. So the lights fail, and then the hull fails. And you can see one thing I really wanted to be sure to animate is this point where the stern section now is separated from the bow and has its own buoyancy. So it suddenly bops up to the surface a little bit. But it's the weight of the triple expansion engines and everything else that then suddenly starts to suck it back down and pull it back down into the water like that, because it's no longer a single hull, a well-balanced ship hull. It's now just a, you know, really heavy, front heavy. It's like its own boat, you know, the stern section. As soon as it was separated from the bow, it's its own 20,000 ton hull form. And guess what? It's got tons of weight just sitting in the front. And so this is all a little bit sped up, I think, but you can see the ship now beginning to plunge, and it goes right back right at the end, goes about vertical, and then drops down like a stone. Just like this. And you can see it underwater, planing away, sinking like that, which is kind of spooky. So what we'll do, if we take this back a minute, we'll just go back to the start of that animation. Now, one thing that always kind of popped into my mind has to do with this lighting, because in the movie Titanic by James Cameron, it's quite bright. It's almost like this, obviously, because it's a movie, you know, and you want to be able to see all the details and everything that's going on. But if we change this this light, I think I can do it like this, and make it as like dark as possible. See, it's still a little bright because you can still see the ship. I've forgotten how to do it. Nope, that's not what we wanted. And then I want to change the intensity here. No, that's not it. I've forgotten how to do it. Sorry, you can see I'm still learning this stuff. But essentially what I was able to do is like replicate like pitch black and then sink the ship. You can't see what's going on. When the ship breaks up and the screen is pitch black, you can't really tell what's happening. And that's important because on the night of the sinking, a lot of people didn't really know what was going on. A lot of people said that the ship sank in one piece. Maybe it's the directional light. Oh, there we go. There we go. So, bearing in mind, right? When Titanic sank, it was a moonless night. And as soon as those lights snap out, you can hardly see anything. And bearing also in mind that when the lookouts spotted the iceberg, they actually didn't spot an iceberg. They spotted a lack of stars. They just saw a big, you know, shape. And this is kind of what this looks like. You see the stars, right? And ignore that moon because that shouldn't be there. But there's suddenly a dark shape. So let's play that breakup animation again, right? we'll put it, so just for context, right? We'll play it from here, okay? So a nice clear view of the ship's hull. So we should see the breakup really clearly, right? Tell me what you think. I know I haven't got all the lights burning at the moment, and I don't know why. But anyway, okay, so the lights snap out. You've got one small lamp burning on the masthead. Now, we'll pause it right there. That's what the ship looks like right now. And you can hardly tell. And for me, that explains a lot why so many passengers said, half of them said they saw it break in half, and the other half said we saw it sink in one piece. Very confusing. You really, really can't tell what's going on in these kind of conditions. So I think that's fascinating to see that in action, because I had never really figured that. I mean, it seems like an obvious point, but to then have the ship, I know a lot of people saw it then glide under the water, and I guess if your eyes had kind of adjusted to the darkness, you would know what's going on. But you can just make out the outline. I don't know if you guys can just see it there, but yeah, it would have been very, very dark. So there you go. That is the Titanic breakup that I animated, and I just figured out why those lights aren't burning, and it's because I turned them off for a reason, and I'll show you that reason in a tick. Can I turn these back on for a second for you so we can get like the full view? Yeah, so this is all super confusing. This has to go to emissive color, I think. Please work for me. I want to turn these lights back on so you can see like the whole hull light up and then turn off. Oh, no, you know what? This isn't going to work. That's all right. I'll show you why I turned the lights off, though, because I animated something else that is for an upcoming video that I'm excited to show you guys. Anyway, while that thinks for a minute, I'm just going to switch back over to the chats here. All I see is the masthead. Yeah, it's interesting. So they used electric lamps, like arc lamps. They also had oil lamps that they would put up there, and some of the accounts talked about emergency lighting. I don't really know much about that. But they also talked about there was like one faint light that was still on the stern of the Titanic as it sank. So that could have been an oil lamp that was slung up to give like limited visibility over the promenade decks because the lighting was pretty bad down there. Okay, that definitely did not work. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna forget about doing that. I just turned the entire hull yellow. That looks like an Orient Line ship. Not what I was going for. As soon as the steam lines were severed when Titanic broke, the pressure is out of the system, right? So those lights are relying on pressure generated in the turbo generators, the dynamos down at the bottom of the ship. Suddenly, there's no pressure. The lights go out, and so that's why I think people say the lights snapped out just before, around about the time Titanic broke. Those steam lines are separating. How did they get an oil lamp there? So essentially, the masts on Titanic, you could climb them relatively easily. You could there were ladders. There were places where you could sling lines. So essentially, you could rig an oil lamp onto a line or a piece of rigging, so it's sitting on that rigging, and then string it up onto the mast and hoist it up. And so suddenly, it's just raising up onto the masthead there. Titanic Gaming says, Mike, you're lagging. Yeah, sorry. But can you hear me? That's probably the more interesting thing. The more important thing is that you can hear me. It doesn't matter that you can't see me, that I'm lagging. As long as you can hear me. Mike, you need to heed our warnings. This computer was not designed for heavy CPU things. I need to get a good computer. I'm sorry, guys. But can you hear me okay? Is that better? I'm just going to turn that off for a sec. Okay, so you can hear me okay. All right, well, you know, I'm going to... Whatever. So long as you guys can hear me, that's all I care about. So I'm going to put this down again. Let's try this again. Because I want to show you guys this cool animation that I did. I look like a PowerPoint presentation. Okay, let me try this one more time. I still want to show you guys this this animation that I did. Where are we going? Oh, it stopped working. Every time. You know, I've never been able to get through a stream without having technical difficulties. Oh, for goodness sake. Anyway. While I get this working, Nonsensical Nautical Rambling says, have you ever heard of the planned German SS Europa from 1909 to 1910? It would have been 900 feet long, 96 feet wide, and would have had 50,000 gross registered tons. I think it became the Imperator. It's interesting. You think about these liners as being... how shall I put it? You know, Titanic. You think, all right, that's a ship from 1912. It was actually designed and conceived, you know, as early as 1908. So they go a ways back, you know. If Lusitania was designed and built in the early part of the 1900s, 1906, they were thinking about designing that ship as early as 1903 or whatever. So they have to plan ahead a long time, you know. So yeah, for a ship that was designed or built rather in 1914, they're thinking about this as early as 1910, laying the groundwork. So they're planning ahead a long time. So whatever ship you like, or whatever ship you're interested in, subtract 5 years, I guess, and that's three to 5 years, and that's how long they were planning it in order to build it in the first place. Mike is giving me PowerPoint presentation vibes. Aww. All right, well, I'll show you the other animation next time we do a stream, because it's essentially, I've just got, it's from the thumbnail of this video, but you've got Olympic, Titanic, and Britannic all sailing together. But again, it's just like a flat image on a 3D environment. So it's actually quite cool that you can make it look kind of three-dimensional. So yeah, I'm glad I could show you guys my breakup theory and show you the way that Titanic sank. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about today was a few of my books, but we've kind of already covered a few of them. Levi Rourke has just left a comment. The reason that's interesting and important, Levi says, "Hi, Mike. The animations are beautiful on par with documentary productions." Levi taught me how to do this, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you, Levi. Really appreciate it, mate. He's Levi, of course. I've been working with on Tom Linsky's and HFX Studios Titanic game, Lusitania game. So that'll be coming out soon. And I owe Levi some plans, so I'll get back to you on that as soon as possible, I promise. Bonnie Trujillo has asked this question a few times, and I have only just got around to addressing it. Mike Brady, what if Titanic was welded instead of riveted? Will it make Titanic stronger? Yeah, it's an interesting one, because there was a ship that sank on a maiden voyage in the 50s. I think she was Norwegian, off the top of my head. The Hans Hedtoft. Norwegian? Riveted hull. And the going theory, the ship just disappeared and it sank after striking an iceberg. Because of the riveted hull, the theory goes that the in a similar way maybe to Titanic, is that the iceberg was able to, you know, with serious force, smash into these hull plates, pop these rivets open, because the pressure they're just not designed to deal with, and open them up. You don't need a lot of open hull plate seams for a ship to flood. They think Titanic's damage was, you know, you had 30 and 20 foot long segments of the hull where the plates could only have been separated by about between 2 and 6 inches. It's not a huge hole, you know, it's not a massive, you know, it's not like at the bottom had been torn open like a like a can. So you just have to open the plates up a little for this water to be getting in. The ship's not watertight anymore. So were Titanic to be welded, the hull plating, I believe, would have actually withstood more of that pressure. And if it was really that glancing blow that it's been believed to be, because the iceberg, in theory, didn't slice open the hull plates, rather it staved them in, I think welding, like a welded hull, actually just has more resistance to that kind of pressure. And also, there are no rivets then to open seams up. So I believe she may have actually suffered less damage. At the least, suffered less damage. So long as, like the Costa Concordia, that rock that she struck just ripped the hull open, because that was such a serious collision. So long as that wasn't the nature of the damage. But I don't think we'll ever know until we really understand the nature of the damage to Titanic's hull. And unfortunately, a lot of it is buried beneath the silt. But Robert Ballard said, I think it was Ballard, when he was investigating the wreck, he said that he saw some iceberg damage, and the plating was only separated by about 3 inches, which is not a lot, but it is enough to sink a ship. Could Titanic's stern have survived and floated? No, I don't think so, because, like I said, as soon as this is a ship's hull, it's one thing. As soon as I need to get a model Titanic like Sam from Historic Travels has, because I'm sick of doing this. As soon as that's gone, this is no longer part of the hull. This is now its own hull. So this is now its own boat, right? You've got, unfortunately, giant reciprocating steam engines sitting here. And those watertight bulkheads on Titanic, don't go any higher than, in that area, than like E and D deck. That is now, with this much weight here, it's now just sitting like this naturally in the waterline, and it's just going to be pulled under. There was that split-second moment where a lot of people thought, gee, the stern's going to float. But I don't think it could have. There's just so much weight. It's so out of balance. Now it's its own ship, really. A 20,000-ton ship with most of the weight just sitting at the very extreme bow end. It's just going to get pulled down and sink. When is the Britannic What If video coming? Yeah, it's coming soon. I feel bad when I make this stuff, like What If videos, because there's so many actual ships out there that deserve a spotlight that I want to make a video about. Like the Carpathia story I was really interested to do, because a lot of, we know about Carpathia. We know it saved Titanic's passengers, whatever that means. But, I didn't realize, for example, this sounds so stupid, and you guys are probably going to laugh at me about this. I'm really interested in ships, the way that they're built, the technical aspects. So a lot of the people element and the story is kind of like, I learn about that secondary. So I always assumed that the iceberg that Titanic struck, I always saw it as like act of God. Yeah, there was a lot of ice in the area, but it just so happened that a berg drifted down and Titanic struck it. I never realized the extent of the ice field that Captain Smith sailed Titanic into. It was a dense ice field marked on the map that was like 50 miles long, and Titanic sailed straight into the middle of it. And I only really learned the magnitude of that from doing that video, because in reading James Bissett's story, his memoir of that night, he was on the Carpathia, and Captain Rostron had turned to him and said, after they got that message and said, hey, there's an ice field, the wireless had come through and said there's an ice field that's 50 miles long. He had obviously in his chart room plotted Titanic's course and saw it was sailing straight for the middle of it. And he turned to Bissett and said, I feel really sorry for Smith on the Titanic, that on his maiden voyage, he's now going to have to be delayed into New York, because obviously he's either going to stop or slow down or divert under the ice field and to continue on to New York. It's going to delay them by like 6 hours plus. So I feel really sorry for Smith, because as a captain, that's what Rostron would have done. He would have stopped or slowed down or gone under the ice field. But Smith didn't. And I'm just perplexed. And the only conclusion I can actually take away from this whole thing, why Smith did that, is that, first of all, being delayed, I don't think he was trying to get there soon. I don't think he wanted to get there faster than the morning they were meant to arrive, because that's a pain for the passengers. They then need to totally reorganize all of their connections. You think you arrive in New York City. If you're traveling on to Philly, or anywhere else, you have to get a train, right? Now, that's all pre-booked ahead of time. For a lot of these passengers, especially first and second class, their connecting trains and other ships and everything are already booked. So they know they're arriving Wednesday morning. They've booked their train to depart early Wednesday afternoon. If they arrive, say, Tuesday morning, they've got a whole day to kill now that they have to reorganize their connecting train. So Smith, I don't think, wanted to get there early. I think he just wanted to get there on time. Exactly on time. And slowing down or stopping would have meant they would have been delayed. He took a gamble because it was clear. It was a clear night, perfectly clear. And it's very telling that the last thing he said, I think, before getting out of the bridge and going to bed, shortly before Titanic hit the berg was, "If you see a mist, come and wake me up straight away." So that tells me that he knew the danger of icebergs. He knew there was a serious danger of ice. He gambled on the fact that because it was a clear night, they were going to see it. So long as it remained clear in Smith's mind, he thought there's no reason to slow down because we're going to see an iceberg. We're going to see it long before we hit it. So he took that gamble, and the last thing he said before going to bed, I think, is really telling because he says, "If there's a mist, wake me up." Because if there's a mist, it's not clear anymore, and Smith's gamble, he has to stop it then and there because he's not going to be able to see the berg before it comes. He overlooked one or two things. First of all, obviously, it's a moonless night, so there's no reflection off of the iceberg. Second of all, which I think is massively incompetent, in my opinion, is, for example, when Carpathia was rushing through the ice field to try and get to Titanic, Rostron had 12 men on the forecastle of the ship. So he has guys in the crow's nest way up on the mast and also 12 men on the forecastle of the ship. And that's an important point because if you are lowered down, you're going to see things against the horizon better, right? The Titanic only had 2 men in the crow's nest keeping lookout as well as those on the bridge. Now on the crow's nest, you're looking from about, how high up would that have been? Gee, if the hull's at that point on the forecastle, 60 or 70 feet tall, it's slightly above the bridge height. So say it's like 100 something feet up, right? So you're 10 stories up. You're looking down at the horizon. And on a moonless night, whatever is coming up is going to be hidden against that horizon because you're looking down at it. Whereas if you had a pair of eyes on the forecastle 60 feet above the waterline, you're not looking down at the horizon. You still are a little bit, but not as pronounced. So I'm shocked that even though Smith knew he was kind of rolling the dice, he didn't put men forward at the forecastle. Because there was a telephone there. There was a portable brass box telephone that you could mount there so they could call the bridge if they saw something. And that part of the ship is known as the head of eyes, the extreme prow of the ship. Because, it's in fog or whatever. As soon as visibility is down, it's common practice to get men up there so they can see what's coming up. Because you have a different viewpoint. The crow's nest is great for distance. You can see other ships, lights, and that kind of thing. But on a moonless night, you're going to see things against the horizon better if you have men at the forecastle at the head of eyes. And it's shocking to me to think that he rolled the dice and he didn't put people on the forecastle. And so, given that you've got that ice field there, he gambled with his passengers' lives and his own life. And fundamentally, I used to believe that blame for the Titanic disaster could not be attributed to any one factor as a number of factors came together. But now I think you can attribute blame for the Titanic disaster to the decision or the decisions that Smith made that night. And I think he was incriminated by Rostron's assumption that he'll slow down. He would have to. He's Rostron as a seasoned captain of the Atlantic with less experience than Smith, but still a seasoned captain, says, well, in my position, I would have stopped or gone under the ice field. Smith didn't. So, it's hard to, I guess, throw blame at someone who, gave their life that night and died with their ship. But it's shocking to think that he didn't change tack. As a captain, you'd be mad to slow down on a clear night, Kaivara says. No, because all those years of experience on the Atlantic might have made him complacent. But on a moonless night, all bets are off. It's a different playing field, you know? Pitch black. At the very least, put some people on the forecastle deck. Well, guys, look. We're getting on that point where I should probably log off. That was an interesting discussion. I know that's a whole can of worms, and it's probably deserving of its own video because I can see you guys are kind of interested in this, and you're all asking. Sim Mum, I guess that's how you say your name, has a really interesting point. They say, seeing how close the collision was, that very well may have saved them. Yeah, 5 seconds more, 10 seconds more could have been all the difference. And maybe just having two guys forward, they would have maybe seen it even 10 seconds earlier. I think how long it was, 35, 38 seconds that they had to react. It's not a lot of time, you know. William Billiam, again, someone asking about Great Lakes ships. Yeah, okay, all right, listen, okay. I will do some things about Great Lakes ships. I know a lot of you guys ask about it. That my company has officially been renamed Great Lakes Freighters Designs and Illustrations. Cafe Machine says, hi, are there any good books on hull shapes? I like hulls. I'll get back to you on that. I know, look, there are some pretty hectic technical manuals out there. I don't know if there's anything that's been written that is really like user-friendly if you're not a naval architect. But I'll do some research on it and have a look. There is one really lovely book called The Law of Ships that I might show you next time. And I will type the name of that. Law as in Lore of ships. It's from the 60s. It gives you a lot of information about all different kinds of ships and the way they were built, the way they were framed and plated, and different sailing ship types and all kinds of things. Really worth it if you can pick a copy up. It's really hard to find, but it's full of just unbelievable illustrations, so would highly recommend it. Nonsensical Nautical Rambling says, what is the oldest thing in your collection? Gee, I've got maybe the Empress stuff. I mean, that's from what, made in 1906, but lost in 1914. Well, look, this has been really lovely. As always, fantastic talking with you all. Sorry, I always get caught up in tangents. The reason I had to do this stream was because I've had some technical problems with my video editing software, so I haven't been able to get a video out this weekend, which is really frustrating because I've got a really good one lined up for you guys. I'll get it out as soon as I can. It's about the Olympic. It's called What Happened to Olympic After World War I. So that'll be out in the next few days. Make sure to check it out. But let's do this again soon. I always love chatting with you guys. You've got some great questions. I'm sorry if I missed your questions. Feel free to put them in the comments of this video and I'll see if I can answer them within the next day or so if I missed you. But take care of yourselves, guys. Lovely seeing you. Thanks so much for joining me. I always really enjoy talking with you all. So look, have a fantastic day or night or whatever it is. I'm going to go and catch up with my uncle and auntie who are visiting from Adelaide, which is lovely. So I'm going to go and get some breakfast. But let's talk again soon. As always, stay safe, stay happy, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.